The moment I realized my own mother had weaponized me, I was standing in Fiola Mare with a check for $4,000 in my hand and my father's mistress sitting 3 tables away. Let me back up. My parents, Richard and Patricia Morosi, had already demolished their anniversary surf and turf by the time I walked through the restaurant doors at 9:15. Mom's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Oh, you're late. Cover the bill, will you?" My sister Chloe laughed into her wine glass, that particular laugh she'd perfected at Sidwell Friends, the one that said she knew something I didn't. "Still as clueless as ever, Bells." I wasn't clueless. I had a master's from Georgetown, ran a nonprofit that actually did things, and hadn't asked my parents for money since I was 23. But standing there in my work blazer while they lounged in their evening best, I felt like I was 12 again, scrambling to figure out the rules of a game everyone else already understood. "Your invitation said 8:30, I said, keeping my voice level. Dad didn't even look up from his phone. "We got hungry." That's when it clicked. They'd told me 8:30, knowing they'd be done by 9. This wasn't an invitation. It was a bill collection with witnesses. Chloe had probably known the whole time, sitting there in her Zimmerman dress that cost more than my rent, watching me walk into their little trap. I pulled out my wallet, because that's what you do when you're raised in Kalorama and your parents have held your emotional hostage since birth. You pay. You smile, you pretend everything's fine while your insides turn to ash. The manager, Lewis, appeared beside me before I could hand over my card. We'd gone to AU together, back when I thought having money meant you had to act like it mattered. "Miss Morosi," he said quietly, "could I speak with you for a moment?" My mother's expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. Lewis led me to the small office behind the bar, and that's when everything I thought I knew about my family splintered into 1,000 sharp pieces. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he said, closing the door, "but your parents have been coming here every Thursday for 2 years. Always the same routine. Your dad arrives first, meets a woman, not your mom. They have drinks, sometimes dinner. Then he leaves, and your mom shows up 20 minutes later with your sister. They toast to something. Last week, your sister said, 'Here's to Belle's never figuring it out.'" The floor tilted. "What woman?" He pulled up the reservation history on his computer. "Diane Castellano. She has the same last name as your dad's business partner." Frank Castellano, my father's oldest friend, his co-founder at Morosi Castellano Capital. Frank's wife, Diane, had been at our house for barbecues, charity galas, Christmas parties. She'd given me a graduation gift. She'd hugged me at my grandmother's funeral. "There's more," Lewis said. He looked genuinely sorry now. "Your mom knows. She's known the whole time. 6 months ago, she came in on a Thursday by accident, saw them together, and left. The next week, she was back with your sister. They've been coming every Thursday since, like clockwork. Same table where they can see your dad and Mrs. Castellano. They just sit there and watch." My brain was trying to process this, trying to make it make sense in the universe where my mother was cold but not cruel, where my father was distant but not a complete fraud, where my sister was competitive but not malicious. Why would they do that? I don't know. But 3 weeks ago, your mom made a reservation for tonight, their actual anniversary. She specifically requested you be added to the list, said you'd be arriving late. Late enough to miss the meal, late enough to get stuck with the bill, late enough to be humiliated in front of the staff, the other diners, anyone who mattered in their narrow, glittering world. This wasn't about money. This was about making me the punchline of a joke I didn't even understand. "Show me the Thursday reservations," I said. Lewis hesitated, then turned to the screen. Every Thursday for 26 months, right there in black and white. My father and Diane Castellano at 7, my mother and Chloe at 8:30. Sometimes they stayed for hours, just watching, just knowing, building some kind of sick ritual out of my father's betrayal. "Does Frank know?" I asked. "Frank Castellano died 8 months ago. Heart attack." The room went silent, except for the distant clatter of the kitchen. Frank was dead. His wife was sleeping with my father, my mother was conducting some kind of psychological surveillance operation with my sister as her accomplice, and I was supposed to pay for their anniversary dinner like a good little ATM with legs. "Thank you," I told Louis, "for telling me. What are you going to do?" I didn't answer because I didn't know yet, but I was done being the punchline. When I walked back into the dining room, my mother was reapplying her lipstick, that particular shade of red she wore like war paint. Dad was still on his phone. Chloe was watching me with something that might have been curiosity, if it wasn't clearly anticipation. They thought I'd just pay and leave. Probably tip too much because I was always trying to prove I wasn't like them, that money hadn't ruined me the way it had ruined them. "Actually," I said, setting down my wallet unopened, "I'm not paying." Mom's lipstick froze halfway to her mouth. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. It's your anniversary, your meal, your bill." Dad finally looked up from his phone. "Don't be childish, Bells." "Childish is inviting your daughter to dinner an hour after you've finished eating, just so she can pick up the tab. Childish is turning your anniversary into some kind of power play." I kept my voice steady, pleasant even, the way you have to when you're dealing with people who've made cruelty into an art form. "I came here because I thought you wanted to see me. Clearly, I was wrong." Chloe set down her wine glass. "God, you're so dramatic." "Am I?" I looked at her directly for the first time. Really looked. Or am I just finally catching on? Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the perfect facade. She knew that I knew. She just didn't know how much. I turned to leave, and that's when my mother's voice cut across the restaurant, loud enough for half the room to hear. "If you walk out that door, Bells, don't bother coming to the house again. Don't call, don't show up at holidays, you're done." I stopped. Not because I was scared, but because I realized this was what she'd wanted all along. An excuse, a reason to cut me out that she could explain to her friends, her book club, her charity board. She walked out on us at our anniversary dinner. Can you imagine? After everything we've done for her? The narrative was already forming in her head, the ungrateful daughter, the black sheep, the one who couldn't be controlled. "That's fine," I said, turning back. "But you should know I'm not walking out because of the bill. I'm walking out because I know about Thursday nights." The color drained from my mother's face so fast I thought she might actually faint. Chloe made a sound like all the air had left her lungs. Dad's phone clattered onto the table. "I know about Diane Castellano," I said quietly. "I know you've been watching them for 2 years. I know Frank is dead. I know everything." The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat. Around us, other diners were pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. This was Georgetown, after all. Scandal was currency, and I just dropped a fortune in the middle of Fiola Mare. My father stood up slowly. His face had gone from tanned and confident to gray and hollow in the span of 30 seconds. "We need to talk about this privately." "No, we really don't. Whatever game you've all been playing, whatever sick dynamic you've built, I'm out. I'm done being your mark, your joke, your convenient scapegoat. Enjoy your anniversary." I made it to the door before Chloe caught up with me. "Bells, wait. You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." I stopped on the sidewalk, the Potomac dark and cold behind us. "Explain why you've been watching Dad cheat on Mom. Explain why Mom is okay with it. Explain why I'm the one who's supposed to stay stupid and grateful while you all play house with your secrets." Chloe's perfect composure cracked completely. "Because it's not Dad's affair. It's Mom's plan, and you just ruined everything." The world tilted again, harder this time. "What?" But she was already backing away, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "You need to leave, Bells, right now, before she comes out here, before you hear things you can't unhear." "Chloe!" "I'm serious. Go. Delete Mom and Dad's numbers. Block us all. Forget you're a Morosi for a while." She glanced back at the restaurant, and I saw genuine terror in her face. "Please, if you ever loved me at all, just go." I should have demanded answers. I should have marched back in there and forced them to tell me everything. But something in my sister's voice, something desperate and real, made me listen. I walked to my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw my mother emerge from the restaurant, phone pressed to her ear, her face twisted with fury. In my rearview mirror, Chloe stood on the sidewalk, watching me leave, and for just a moment she looked less like my tormentor and more like someone who'd been drowning for years and had just realized she was going under for the last time. I drove home to my Mount Pleasant apartment, the one my parents had always said was charming, in that way that meant small and unimpressive. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, sat on my second-hand couch, and tried to piece together what the hell had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Lewis from Fiola Murray. Your mother just paid the bill. She also left instructions that you're banned from the restaurant permanently. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know she made another reservation. Next Thursday, same time, just her and your sister, and she asked specifically for the table that faces the entrance." They weren't watching my father anymore. They were waiting for something, or someone. Another text came through before I could respond. "Also, your mother asked me to tell her if you ever came back or tried to contact me about what I told you. She offered me $10,000. I declined, but I wanted you to know what you're dealing with." $10,000 to ensure my silence, or to track whether I was still asking questions? I sat there in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built separately from their money and their madness, and realized I'd been wrong about everything. This wasn't about my father's affair. This wasn't even about betrayal in the conventional sense. This was about power, control, and something darker that I was only beginning to understand. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Bells?" A woman's voice. Familiar, but strained. "It's Diane Castellano. I think we need to talk. I know what you said at dinner tonight. I know what your family's been doing, and I need you to understand something before your mother gets to you." Gets to me? She's already making calls. To your board members, your donors, your friends. She's destroying you, Bells. Right now. Tonight. And she won't stop until there's nothing left of the life you built. My laptop was already open. I pulled up my nonprofit's website, my social media, my email. Nothing looked different. Yet. "Why are you warning me?" I asked. Diane's laugh was bitter. "Because I loved Frank. Because your father was supposed to help me prove how he really died. And because your mother just called to tell me that if I don't disappear, she'll make sure everyone knows I killed him." The bourbon glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Frank didn't die of a heart attack," Diane whispered, "and your mother knows exactly what happened to him. She was there." I met Diane Castellano at midnight in a Starbucks parking lot in Tenleytown, far enough from Georgetown that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew, close enough that I could make it home fast if this turned out to be another trap. She arrived in a BMW that had seen better days. No makeup, hair pulled back, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd attended my parents' parties. "Frank had stage 4 pancreatic cancer," she said, before I'd even fully closed her car door. "He had maybe 3 months left. He was in pain constantly, the kind of pain where you beg someone, anyone, to make it stop. Your father knew, your mother knew, they all knew." The parking lot lights cast a strange shadows across her face. "I don't understand what this has to do with—" Frank wanted to die on his own terms, at home, with dignity, before the pain got worse. It's not legal in D.C., so we needed help. Someone who could make it look natural when the time came. Someone with connections to get the right medications without questions. She turned to look at me directly. "Your mother volunteered." My throat closed. "No, my mother wouldn't." "Your mother has a degree in pharmacology from Hopkins. Did you know that? She never practiced, but she kept her knowledge. More than that, she's been on the board of Sibley Hospital for 15 years. She knows people. She knows how to make things happen quietly. I didn't know about the pharmacology degree. I'd never known what my mother studied before she married my father. She'd always just been Mom, the woman who chaired charity events and played tennis at the club and made cutting remarks over family dinners. Frank died in his sleep 8 months ago. Peaceful, painless, exactly how he wanted. Your mother provided what he needed. She sat with us. She held my hand while he slipped away. Her voice cracked. And then she started coming to the restaurant every Thursday. Why? To remind me that she could tell people what really happened, that she could destroy me with one conversation with the right prosecutor, that Frank's peaceful death could become a murder investigation if I didn't play along. Play along with what? Diane's laugh was hollow. Your father and I aren't having an affair, Bells. We're planning a merger. Morosi Castellano Capital is worth $300 million. After Frank died, his 50% came to me. Your mother wants it. All of it. She's been using the Thursday dinners to make your father think I'm desperate, lonely, vulnerable. She wants him to seduce me, marry me after a respectable grieving period, and then find a way to push me out entirely. The pieces were sliding into place, forming a picture so ugly I wanted to look away. But you're not playing along. I was, for a while, until I realized your mother's endgame isn't just the company, it's complete control. Of your father, of the money, of everyone in her orbit. She's been systematically isolating anyone who might question her, starting with you. Me? I'm nobody in this. I don't even work in finance. No, but you're smart. You ask questions. You built something on your own that has nothing to do with their money or their name. That makes you dangerous. Diane pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. Your mother's been telling people you're unstable, that you've had a breakdown, that you've been making wild accusations against your own family. She started months ago, long before tonight. She showed me the messages. My mother texting with other board members of my nonprofit, expressing concern about my mental health, questioning my judgment, suggesting maybe I needed to step back, get help, take a break before I damaged the organization's reputation. This is insane, I whispered. This is Patricia Morosi. She doesn't lose, she doesn't forgive, and she sure as hell doesn't let anyone walk away knowing what she's capable of. Diane put her phone away. Tonight, when you called her out at the restaurant, you declared war. And trust me, you don't want to fight this war the way she fights. Then what am I supposed to do? You beat her at her own game, with evidence, documentation, and the one thing she can't control, the truth. Diane reached into the back seat, pulled out a thick folder. Everything's in here. Frank's medical records showing the cancer diagnosis, audio recordings of your mother discussing the medication she obtained, emails between her and your father about the merger strategy, bank records showing money she's been hiding in offshore accounts, and most importantly, Frank's statement. Statement? He wrote it 2 weeks before he died, a full confession of what we were planning and why. He cleared me of any wrongdoing, explained that it was his choice, his request. He wanted to make sure I'd be protected if anything happened. He pressed the folder into my hands. But he also wrote about your mother, about conversations they had, about things he overheard over 30 years of being your father's business partner. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first page was Frank's statement, written in a clear, steady hand, despite the cancer that had been eating him alive. I've known Patricia Morosi for 32 years. In that time, I've watched her systematically destroy anyone who threatened her control. She forced Richard's first business partner out by fabricating an affair scandal. She isolated her own mother until the woman died alone in a nursing home, convinced her family had abandoned her. She's been building a cage around Richard for decades, and he doesn't even see the bars. I looked up at Diane. Why didn't he do something with this while he was alive? Because he was protecting me. If he released any of this, the investigation into his death would have destroyed both of us. But now I have nothing left to lose, and neither do you. She was right. My mother was already burning down my reputation. By tomorrow, my board would probably ask for my resignation. By next week, my name would be poison in every nonprofit circle in D.C. Patricia Morosi didn't make threats. She made moves, quiet and devastating, while smiling for the cameras. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "I need you to go to your father, alone, tomorrow morning before your mother has a chance to get to him. Show him everything in that folder. Make him understand what he's married to." Diane's eyes were hard now, focused. Richard's not a bad man. He's weak, lazy, willing to look the other way when it's convenient, but he loved Frank. And if he sees proof that your mother used Frank's death as leverage, that she's been manipulating all of us, he might actually grow a spine. And if he doesn't? Then we go nuclear. We release everything to the press, to the SEC, to anyone who'll listen. Your mother's offshore accounts are technically legal, but ethically questionable. Her role in Frank's death is technically assistance in suicide, but could be argued as negligent homicide, depending on the prosecutor. Either way, it's enough to destroy the pristine image she's built. Diane started her car. But I'd rather avoid that if possible. Not for her sake, for Frank's. He wouldn't want his death turned into a media circus. I held the folder against my chest like armor. Why me? Why not go to Dad yourself? Because I'm the other woman, even if that's all fiction. You're his daughter. You're the one person who might still have access to whatever conscience he has left buried under 30 years of Patricia's manipulation. She put the car in gear. And because I saw your face tonight at the restaurant, you're not playing their game anymore. That makes you the most dangerous person in this whole mess. I got out of her car and stood in that parking lot watching her taillights disappear down Wisconsin Avenue. The folder felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Inside was enough to blow up my family, wreck my father's business, and send my mother to prison. And I was going to use every page. The next morning, I showed up at my father's office at 7 a.m. before his assistant arrived, before my mother could call with new instructions on how to handle me. He was alone, drinking coffee and reviewing reports, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Bells," he said, surprised. "Your mother said you'd been unstable? Having a breakdown? Making accusations?" I set the folder on his desk. "Let me guess, she also told you not to contact me, that I needed space, that she'd handle everything." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "She's worried about you. She's destroying me, systematically, publicly, and you've been letting her do it because it's easier than admitting what she is." I opened the folder to Frank's statement. "Read this, all of it, and then decide if you still want to pretend you don't know what you've married." I watched his face as he read. Watched the color drain, the understanding dawn, the horror set in. He read Frank's statement 3 times, looked through the medical records, the emails, the bank statements. His hands were shaking by the time he reached the recordings. "This can't be real," he whispered. "It's all real. Frank documented everything because he knew Patricia would use his death as leverage. He was right." I sat down across from him. "She's been controlling you for decades, Dad. Isolating your allies, eliminating your options, building a cage so perfect you don't even see it. And now she's doing the same thing to me." "But the affair with Diane—" "There is no affair. That's all Patricia's fiction. She wanted you to think Diane was vulnerable, so you'd try to seduce her, marry her, and give Patricia control of the company." I leaned forward. "Did you ever actually want to sleep with Diane, or did Patricia just suggest it enough times that it started to feel like your idea? The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. Jesus Christ, he said finally. How long has this been going on? According to Frank, since before I was born. Probably since before Chloe was born. You married a woman who saw you as a project, not a partner, and she's been managing that project with terrifying efficiency ever since. He stood up, paced to the window, looked out over K Street with something like despair. What does she want? The company? Power. Control. The satisfaction of knowing she's the smartest person in every room and nobody even realizes it. I picked up one of the offshore account statements. She's been hiding money for years, building her own safety net while making sure everyone else is dependent on her. If you try to leave, if you try to fight back, she'll make sure you're left with nothing. And you're telling me this because I'm already dead in her eyes. She's already started destroying me. But you still have a choice. You can keep pretending everything's fine, keep letting her manipulate everyone around you, keep being the weak, complicit husband who looks the other way. I stood up, faced him. Or you can be my father, actually be my father, for the first time in my adult life. The silence stretched between us, full of 35 years of distance and disappointment and missed chances. What do you need me to do? He asked finally. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Dad called his lawyer, his accountant, his most trusted colleagues. We went through every document in the folder, building a case not for criminal prosecution, but for divorce. Comprehensive, devastating, ironclad divorce. Patricia Morosi had made herself untouchable through careful manipulation and strategic positioning, but she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated how much documentation Frank had kept, and she'd overplayed her hand with me. By noon, Dad had filed for divorce and frozen all joint accounts. By 2, he'd called an emergency board meeting to discuss his wife's undisclosed financial dealings. By 4, she was served with papers at the house in Colorama, in front of the housekeeper and the gardener and the neighbor who'd been her friend for 20 years. I wasn't there for that part. I was meeting with my nonprofit board, explaining everything before my mother's version of events could take root. I showed them the texts she'd sent, the campaign she'd waged, the systematic attempt to undermine my credibility. I know this sounds insane, I told them. I know it sounds like exactly the kind of thing someone having a breakdown would say. But I have evidence, I have documentation, and I need you to give me the benefit of the doubt long enough to look at it. They did, and what they found made the whole board go silent. She was going to push you out, my board chair said finally, then swoop in as a major donor, probably get herself appointed in your place. She's been positioning herself for months. I know. Why would she do this to her own daughter? Because I built something she didn't control, and Patricia Morosi doesn't allow anything she doesn't control. I closed my laptop. I'm taking a leave of absence, 3 months. You need time to stabilize without me being the story. I need time to figure out what comes next. But I'm not resigning, and I'm not going away quietly. That evening, I finally called Chloe. She answered on the first ring, her voice small and scared in a way I'd never heard before. Is it done? She asked. It's done. Dad filed for divorce. The board knows about the offshore accounts. Mom's reputation is finished. Good. The word came out like a sob. Good. Bells, I'm so sorry. I've been so fucking sorry for years, but I didn't know how to. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was terrified. Mom had so much on me, so many ways to destroy me if I stepped out of line. When I was 17, I got pregnant. Some guy from a party. Mom found out before I even decided what to do. She handled everything, made it all go away, and then she owned me. Every choice I've made since then, she's been in my head. Chloe's voice broke.
Watching Dad with Diane on Thursdays, that was my punishment. She wanted me to see what she was capable of, to know that if I ever tried to leave, if I ever tried to help you or Dad, she'd make sure everyone knew about the abortion, about the guy, about everything.
I closed my eyes, feeling something crack open in my chest. Chloe, that's not... I know. I know it's not as bad as what she did to you. But I was so young, and she made me feel like I was nothing without her protection, like the world would eat me alive if she wasn't there to manage things. She sniffed. When you confronted her at the restaurant, when you just walked out like none of it mattered, I realized you were stronger than I'd ever been, and I hated you for it. And I was so goddamn proud of you, I couldn't stand it. Where are you now? Hotel in DuPont. Mom tried to call me 47 times today. I finally blocked her number. A pause. Can I see you? Yeah, you can see me. We met at my apartment, and when Chloe walked through the door, she looked like she'd aged 10 years in a single day. We sat on my secondhand couch and drank cheap wine and talked for the first time in our lives like actual sisters instead of competitors in Patricia's long game. What happens to her now? Chloe asked. Dad's lawyer thinks the offshore accounts alone are enough to ensure she gets almost nothing in the divorce. And once the truth about Frank comes out, not the assisted suicide part, but the leverage part, she'll be done in this city. Nobody will touch her. She'll disappear, go somewhere warm and expensive, and reinvent herself as the tragic woman whose family betrayed her. Probably, but she'll be alone. And for someone like Patricia, that's worse than prison. Chloe curled into the corner of my couch, looking young and exhausted. Do you think we'll ever be okay? Like actually okay? I think we have a chance now, without her pulling strings, without her making us perform for scraps of approval. I refilled both our glasses. It'll take time, probably therapy, definitely more nights like this where we're honest instead of perfect. I can do honest. She smiled, small and real. I might suck at it, but I can try. 3 months later, my mother left D.C. for a villa in Tuscany. The divorce finalized with terms that left her comfortable but not wealthy, known but not respected. Frank's statement was never released to the press. Diane and I agreed that his death deserved privacy, but enough people in the right circles knew the truth that Patricia's reign was over. Dad sold his share of Morosi Castellano Capital to Diane, who renamed it Castellano Capital and turned it into one of the most ethically run firms in the city. Dad retired to Annapolis, bought a sailboat, and started therapy for the first time in his life. Chloe moved into a smaller place in Petworth, got her own therapist, and started figuring out who she was when she wasn't performing for an audience of one. We had dinner every Tuesday, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, always real. And me? I went back to my nonprofit with a clarity I'd never had before. I understood now what I'd been running from all these years. Not wealth, not family, but the specific poison of Patricia's brand of love. The kind that wrapped itself around you until you couldn't tell the difference between affection and control. On what would have been my parents' 34th anniversary, I got a letter from my mother. No return address, just Italian postage and her perfect handwriting. Bells, you've won. I suppose I should congratulate you. You've destroyed everything I built, turned your father and sister against me, and emerged as the hero of your own story. How very American of you. But I want you to know something. I'm not sorry. I did what I had to do to survive in a world that was never designed for women like me. Smart women who refused to be decorative. I chose power when love was never really on the table. You would have done the same. Someday, when you're older and harder and tired of pretending money doesn't matter, you'll understand. Until then, enjoy your small life and your righteous anger. You earned it. Patricia. I read the letter twice, then I burned it in my kitchen sink and washed the ashes down the drain. She was wrong.
I wouldn't have done the same, because I'd learned the difference between strength and cruelty, between protecting yourself and destroying everyone around you, between surviving and actually living. That Tuesday, Chloe came over with Thai food and a story about her new therapist that made us both laugh until we cried. Dad called from his boat to ask what we were doing for Thanksgiving, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I had a family that wasn't held together by fear or money or Patricia's careful manipulation. We were held together by choice, by honesty, by the hard daily work of actually giving a damn about each other. And that was worth more than all the anniversary dinners in Georgetown. Power, built on manipulation, will always collapse, but relationships built on truth can survive anything, even family.